Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Community Renewable Energy Agency Board meeting on this beautiful. Yeah, it's on.
It's on, but it doesn't sound like it's working. Like mine's on too, but we don't hear it in here.
But now there we go.
That's better.
And Dave hears us, so we're good. All right. Well, welcome to the Monday, April 6, 2026 meeting today. It's a beautiful day, and again, the beautiful view from the Millcreek Commons area. It's always great to come to this room to have a meeting and look out those mountains. So thank you very much, Millcreek, for hosting us on these meetings. Appreciate that. And as usual, we're going to go around the room and introduce everybody, and then we'll go through the tiles on floor. So, Mayor Benyon.
Mayor Galen Benyon, I represent Cottonwood Heights.
I'm Sherry Jackson with Millcreek.
Drew Quinn with the City of Holiday, and I will be voting.
Emily Quinton, alternate board member for Summit County. I will be voting until Councilmember Armstrong joins.
Glade Soward, Salt Lake City Sustainability, alternate board member not voting.
Ellen Burrell, Cottonwood Heights City Council.
And Melody.
Melody McCandless, Grand County Commission, voting.
Luke.
Luke Carton, Park City alternate voting.
Randy.
Randy Aton, Springdale, voting.
Dave.
Dave Graff, Ogden City Council, voting.
Suzanne.
Suzanne Harrison, Salt Lake County Council member, voting.
Pamela.
Pamela Gibson, Town of Castle Valley, voting.
Glenn.
Glenn Symes, Ogden City Council staff, just listening in.
Nice to have you. Chris.
Hey, good afternoon. Chris Colley, Town of Alta, alternate board member voting.
Lorenzo.
Lorenzo Long, Ogden City alternate board member, not voting.
Sophia.
Sophia Nicholas, Salt Lake City staff, just listening.
Jeremy. Jeremy's got his mic on. Emily. Oh, that's you, Emily. Okay. Alexi.
Alexi Lamb, City of Moab alternate, voting until Councilmember Lofton arrives.
Wonderful. Steve.
Steve Burton, Ogden City Council staff.
Janine.
Jean Evenden, Ogden resident.
Sorry, thanks. I have a hard one on that one. Thank you. Monica.
Monica O'Malley, Salt Lake City staff.
Sheldon.
Sheldon Howell, Cottonwood Heights, alternate not voting.
Brandon.
Brandon Brady, Colville City, voting.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. And we'll get started here in a second when I bring up the agenda items. As always, the purpose and the overview of the meeting, we're going to go through the different committees. We'll walk through some slides for the presentation to the different committees. We'll look at the ordinance a little bit and answer any questions from the different community heads. 1.2, the current participation percentages are on the board packets. Again, if you always have a question, reach out to Glade, Emily, or myself, and we should be able to get you some answers. Moving on to the business matters at hand, item 2.1. I look for a motion to approve the March 2nd, 2026 board meeting minutes and the March 26th, 2026 Communications Committee special meeting minutes. I'll look for a motion.
So I move we approve now the agenda's out of my face, the dates, March 2nd, 2026 board meeting minutes and the March 26th, 2026 Communications Committee special meeting minutes.
Second.
A motion from Mayor Jackson, a second from Councilmember Quinn. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 And I'm an aye. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the Treasury report, and I'll turn the time over to Emily.
The treasurer report is in your packet. The only change since last month is one additional payment out to our legal and technical consultant team, to James Dodge, Russell, and Stevens. And then the one thing that I'll note, during our last board meeting, we provided a bit of a more comprehensive overview of where the agency's budget stands right now. So if you wanted a refresher on that, there are some slides in the last board packet. And we did note that, at some point, once the program is launched and revenue is coming in, there will be some revenue set aside for our agency expenses. However, between now and that time, we're spending in the realm of around $11,000 a month on our legal and technical support. We may not have enough agency budget remaining to sort of get us to that point where we have budget coming in through program revenue. So we kind of just made a broad ask of, if anybody's open to considering setting aside funds for a voluntary contribution to the agency budget later in 2026. That is something that we are interested in. But we also know that members have a bigger priority right now in terms of what you're addressing related to the program. But if you have any questions about that, we could chat about that.
Thank you very much, Emily. Any questions for Emily? All right, we'll move on to the reports of the committees, item 2.3, the reports of the committee and the communications, and I'll turn the time over to Monica. Excuse me, Chris. We'll get to Monica next.
Meant to put early in the deck, but it serves as a pretty good segue to get into the meat of the matter here for the program. It is tough to believe that it's been only a month since the Public Service Commission issued its decision approving the program, and it's been a busy time on communications since then. One of the things that's happened is the agency released a press release on March the 26th, and that has been pretty successful, I would say, in generating some interest from the media. As of when I put together these slides, I think the first story out of the gate anyways was this one that appears on the slide from KSL. I know we at least have some stories out there in the St. George News, and one that aired on KUER this morning. As of just a few minutes ago, it was still first on the KUER.org website. Glade Sowards has been running point for talking to the media. We should all give Glade a pat on the back and our sincere thanks for saying what needs to be said to generate, I think, what's turned out to be pretty fair, balanced, and effective coverage of the program. So thanks, Glade. Another big update. So also on the 26th, a few hours after that press release went out, we had our special communications meeting. It was really well attended. It's not every day you send a calendar invite to like 60 or 70 people from 20 different organizations and you get more than half of them to join the meeting, but that happened. So yeah, I think we had almost 40 people. We had quite a few board members. We did notice the meeting more or less as a board meeting just to avoid any issues with the Open and Public Meetings Act, and that's why we generated those sort of typical form minutes that you just approved. Pretty simple agenda. Glade reviewed the basics of the program at a really high level. We talked about everything from the enabling statute to the way that we developed the program as a sort of coalition of the willing without dedicated staff. We talked about the Public Service Commission order, and then I described our communications program And a big topic of discussion was and continues to be this provision in the utility agreement we're now living under with Rocky Mountain Power about communications. We focused a lot on key talking points, and as I'm sure we all can appreciate, as we approach the ordinance adoption deadline, and especially as we get closer to program launch and the opt-out period, making sure we're driving home, key points about the basics of the program is paramount. We had a number of nice breaks for Q&A, so we did get some questions from board members and folks like city council staff from various communities. We ended up taking more than an hour and stayed on the call with some key folks, such as Councilmember Burrow from Cottonwood Heights. And the high level takeaway is that participating communities are excited. We need to provide more opportunities to learn about the program and what the facts about the program are. Yeah, it's safe to say there's kind of a sense of urgency about getting the message out there. So thanks to everybody who participated in that meeting. So like I mentioned, Section 316 of the utility agreement sort of frames our communications program as of now. The program was approved by the Public Service Commission, so we have a program. Utah Renewable Communities and Rocky Mountain Power are working together within the confines of the order and the utility agreement. And this Section 316 is conspicuous, literally, because it's the only text in the agreement that's bolded, interestingly. And what it basically says is that Rocky Mountain Power and Utah Renewable Communities must review and approve each other's quote unquote news releases or publicly distributed promotional material. We construe that mostly to mean press releases or social media, basically anything that's primarily intended for a general public consumption. Later on in that same paragraph, it makes it clear that the agency and our participating communities are not restricted from communicating about the program during open and public meetings of, say, our respective city councils or with our constituents. So we don't need to worry about going through a review process with the utility when it comes to that kind of a thing.
Chris, can I interrupt you just for a second? This is Sherry Jackson with
Yes.
Millcreek. Do you
Yes, of
have
course.
a contact person or somebody with URC or RMP that information should go through to be reviewed? Just thinking about newsletters or things that we want to put information out to our residents, who exactly would we go to have things reviewed?
Today. So in the, just over a month that's transpired since the order was issued, key support staff such as, Glade and Sophia from Salt Lake City, Emily and myself have been meeting to talk through this relationship with Rocky Mountain Power we find ourselves in. And we do have a kind of a strategy forward approach to trying to churn through the body of communications materials that we've generated up to this date. So we did have what I think we all agree was a productive meeting last week on April 1st to talk about, like, how can we be more efficient in reviewing content. And I think we're hopeful that we can essentially agree to, high level talking points. And, as we move through the content we've already developed, that'll just get faster and faster. For now, I think the safest thing to do is to, base any, generally public facing city communications materials on the content and communication stuff that we've already published. So the key points there are the press release, and then we have a blog post that was posted on utahrenewablecommunities.org that's what's been reviewed and approved now. I would say, we're also really happy to review and kind of workshop communications content from Millcreek City, for instance, if that would be helpful or give you some comfort. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. I mean, if, I'm just
Okay.
wondering, is it URC that has to approve the information, or is it Rocky Mountain Power? Because I know our communications team has been a little reticent to put much out there because they don't want to run afoul of this agreement. But yet we want to be very transparent and let all of our residents know what is going on. So I want to make sure that we have a timely way to get information approved so we can put it out to our residents without having it backlogged or feel like we're kind of having the damper put on the communication efforts that we're trying to do.
Yeah, it looks like Sophia has her hand raised. I know she's going to have a helpful answer. So I don't know if we want to turn it over to Sophia.
Yeah, go ahead, Sophia.
Sure, and I think there's a couple of ways to do it. When we talked with Rocky Mountain Power last week, they said that we can contact their communications PR director directly and CC the Rocky Mountain Power program manager. So basically, if you have something, and we'll send this out via email so everyone knows, but if you have something you'd like to directly get approved, we'll want to have you email Rocky Mountain Power with those two contacts and Glade and Chris CC'd. And that could be something if if it veers a lot from the kind of standard approval you already have, then there's no reason you can't just reach out to them directly and we can chat about the best way to do that. But
okay,
they told us, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sophia. Okay, well, like we've been saying, it's a work in progress. I do expect that we will develop a productive understanding about talking points that we can all live with. And again, the blog posts I mentioned on the website and the press release itself were thoroughly vetted, and they're really pretty comprehensive in terms of capturing the key points that we think ought to be the focus of any general public communications at this point. On the next slide, we will get into something that has come up in our work with Rocky Mountain Power to review the press release and that blog post. And it's a significant talking point for the board. Essentially, we drafted those materials mostly relying on the name and naming convention, kind of the Utah Renewable Communities brand. And in reviewing those materials with Rocky Mountain Power, they were sort of adamant in pointing out that the legal name of the energy program is the Community Clean Energy Program. And so, where those of us who've been working closely with Rocky Mountain Power have landed is that we're essentially going forward in our approach to communications, respecting that distinction between the agency and our respective communities participating in the program as Utah Renewable Communities, while starting to more and more refer to the program as the Community Clean Energy Program. I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about this once I get through the rest of the communications slides, because what the organization's called and what we refer to the program as has been a subject of board discussion and actually formal action in the past. So maybe we can just come back to that at the end of the slides. So again, we do have some constraints in the context of that utility agreement section, but that same section is quite clear that our communities and the agency are not bound in the way we communicate in our public meetings and with our constituents. So, make the presentations you need to make to your city councils. Please promote signups to the URC newsletter. It's been a little bit of a dormant channel in the first quarter of 2026, but we are working on newsletter content. And newsletter is a pretty a healthy channel at this point in terms of readership. So ask your comms teams to repost and share URC content, as it gets posted, because we are reviewing some of that with Rocky Mountain Power. Please reach out to groups like the Utah chapter of the Sierra Club, Stewardship Utah, and Utah Clean Energy. They're already active in your communities as we approach these big decisions coming up. We're going to be pushing out our communications assets over the next few weeks as we move through the approval process with Rocky Mountain Power. And again, please feel free to contact us if you have questions about what's appropriate to post and not appropriate. We can help workshop presentations and things like that. Okay, here's an inventory of some of the material we've already developed or that's in the works. Thanks to Monica for putting this table together. So we do have, we have the press release, we have a blog post that's been approved, and then we have some social media and newsletter content. We had aspired to get more of this stuff out during that March 26th meeting, but again, as we sort of learn to live with the utility agreement, we've taken some pause on that. But so all of this is in the works, and we will be distributing it as it is ready. And then before wrapping up, I just want to talk through some of the points that we, again, want to remind you to focus on in your communications to constituents and with your legislative bodies. The Community Clean Energy Program gives Utahns the power to choose clean, reliable, affordable electricity, supporting healthier families, communities, and the environment. So this is a voluntary program for Utahns and participating communities to use the electricity sources that they want. The program, by investing in local clean energy, meets Utah's growing energy needs while keeping power reliable and air cleaner for generations. So it helps supports the state's push for increased electricity generation capacity. We have a couple new ones on the next slide. We really want to focus on that cost per month for residential customers. So the Community Clean Energy Program will cost $4 a month, as I think we all well know at this point, with business rates based on consumption. And of course, qualified low-income ratepayers can get a bill credit to cover that monthly increase. Finally, this might sound like it borders a little bit on advocacy, which I know we shied away from in the past, but adopting the program ordinance gives your constituents the opportunity to make their own decisions about staying in the program, whereas not making that decision to adopt the ordinance forecloses that choice for them. So yes, it will continue to be a busy season for our communications program. The website is, we're about to get under review on the website with Rocky Mountain Power. We have additional assets to work through with the utility, and some we're going to begin anew. So please stand by from messages from the communications committee about assets that have been reviewed and that we can push out. Yeah, we're working on some other content with Penna Powers. We are working on a newsletter content. We have 2 committee meetings this month on the 10th of April and on the 22nd. With the flurry of activity over the last month, I'm looking forward to kind of stabilizing that workflow and getting the committee more activated through review content and our approach to Rocky Mountain Power. And once again, please, for instance, Mayor Jackson, if you have questions or concerns about what the post or present, you can reach out to any of the key program staff or the communications committee to workshop and collaborate on your presentation or anything else.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Chris? I just want to touch on a couple things here. Again, the comms team has done an incredible job of driving this message, and I always think that it should be an easy. Once it's released, send out the messages, and everything's easy. But working with Rocky Mountain Power, working with 19 communities, there's a delay there in trying to make sure everybody is on that same page. And especially when you're working with a company like Rocky Mountain Power, that's also difficult because they want to make sure that the message is also promotes them and promotes everybody here in the energy side of the house. So there's a little delay there in the time. But I think we all have the same vision. We all have the same desires and goals here. And we have some great press releases now, so you can use those. We have great posts that have already been basically approved by Rocky Mountain Power and URC to send out, so you can repost that. So there's a lot of stuff that's already been out there that you don't need to reinvent the wheel to say the same message. But there is Glade, Emily, Chris are wonderful assets. Sophia's wonderful assets also. If you're concerned about some of the language that you're using, feel free to reach out. But really look at the language that we've already released, and then you can kind of go, hey, this is not doing it. We're not being controversial in what we're saying here. And again, you're also speaking to your constituents. So there's a freedom of, as you as the mayor, you as a council member, to speak to constituents about a program as their elected official. So realize that. But please, if you got questions, don't hesitate to text us, send us right away, because we're all on board to making sure this thing happens by June 2nd. So thank you very much, Chris. And I'll turn the time now over, unless there's any other further questions or comments. Emily?
I'll just make a comment regarding the name of the program that Chris mentioned. Later in the agenda, I'll walk us through the template, slides, and memo that I sent out to board members a couple of weeks ago. And I just want to let you know that I attempted to sort of partially address that with like the title of some of the documents, and then basically in both the memo and the slides, added sort of a disclaimer to say that, this has often been referred to as Utah Renewable Communities. The official name of the program is Community Clean Energy Program. These terms might be used interchangeably as we adjust to potentially, I've gotten very used to saying URC personally. So it's a little bit of an adjustment period. But I just wanted to let you know that, these things have been happening kind of stacked timing wise. And in the interest of getting the memo and the slides out, I, tried to sort of minimally address that. But if you needed any assistance sort of working with the memo or slides further, again, we'll talk about that in a little bit on the agenda. I'm here and available.
Thank you very much, Emily. All right, now we'll turn the time over to the Low Income Plan Committee and Monica.
Update and reminder to give folks, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Monica O'Malley. I work for Salt Lake City in the Sustainability Department, and I help facilitate the Low Income Plan Committee. So the committee is still meeting once a month. In March, we mainly focused on just understanding the Public Service Commission's order, especially the what it means for the low income strategies that we proposed in the program application. I think it's all good news that I think it's really great that we can tell folks that if they're enrolled in Rocky Mountain Power's Home Electric Lifeline program or help, that they can participate in the program for free. I think that's a very simple message, and we've started to update our assets accordingly. Now we're shifting our gears or attention in these next couple months leading up to June 2nd, that ordinance adoption deadline, towards the outreach portion of our low income plan. So this month and through May, we'll be focusing on that. As a reminder, all communities have each adopted a plan for low income assistance, and those plans all include a section on outreach that communities will conduct with local organizations. So if your community adopts the participation ordinance, there will be some outreach to do later this year. Some of that will be handled entirely by the committee, and some of that will be the responsibility of individual communities, either alone or in coordination with neighboring URC members. So this we'll have some more information on all of this once we're through that ordinance adoption phase of the program, and we'll be helping, the committee will be helping folks with this coordination with other neighboring communities. We'll be supporting you all with outreach assets and information, and I think that's all I have to update today. Just a reminder that that's all coming after the ordinance adoption phase, and will be ongoing outreach and communications leading up to program launch.
Thank you very much, Monica. Any questions for Monica? Again, on the low-income side that we've known since like the beginning, not even half of the residents that are eligible for the HELP program actually enroll in the program. So there's a lot of, again, back to the communication side of the house, the Public Service Commission, basically it is free for those members who are qualified for the Schedule 3, which is the HELP program. And that's a wonderful asset or, outcome of this program. It is free for those people who are qualified, but there's still a number of people who would be qualified if they signed up for it. So back to the whole communications and getting the word out. This is one of those ideas where keep pressing that word and making sure that people understand that they could be eligible and they could have this actually program without any charge. Thank you, Monica. Now I'm going to turn the time over to Glade on the program design team. And Glade has just one or two slides.
Yeah, just one or two. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to kind of real quick, if I could, build on some of the things that Chris said on the communications front, since I've been responding to some of these press inquiries. But in addition to us being able to speak about the program without pre-approval, well, first of all, let me address a question that Mayor Jackson raised earlier, which is, who approves this? And it's really the parties to the utility agreement. So it'll be the communities or URC writ large, as well as Rocky Mountain Power. So, but to expand on that, then, not only can we, address questions from constituents and talk about these in open meetings, certainly we can also talk before the PSC about it if there's another docket or meetings, but we can also reply to press inquiries. So that doesn't need to be pre-approved if, KSL calls Millcreek and has questions, you can respond to that. Certainly the communications team is there to help you with that, but just to make that clear. So sorry, I just wanted to cover that point. And then I will get into the Program Design Committee update. Let's have the next slide. Yeah, thanks. So the committee membership hasn't changed. You can see there who was involved. I think we will maybe have a change with Park City at some point, but I'll want to check with Emily and we can give you an update next month on that. Next slide, please. So key activities, we met, the Program Design Committee met twice on the 9th and the 23rd of March. And as Chris said, as I was preparing these slides, it was hard to believe that we haven't met as the board since the program application was approved by the PSC. So obviously a really exciting milestone. We'll talk more about that in a moment. The committee continued to work on ordinance adoption efforts, and Emily sent out, you'll recall, template materials, the ordinance itself, slides, and a detailed memo for you to use with your councils and commissions. And we're also trying to track the council and commission hearing dates and other key information. And then we have drafted a startup cost agreement. That's for Salt Lake, and I'll give you an update on that in a moment. On the contract negotiation front, or the PPA, we've now hosted meetings with the selected final shortlist project bidders. So we've had our first round of meetings with those bidders and Rocky Mountain Power, as well as representation from our legal team. And relatedly, Energy Strategies has begun to work on updating our modeling that will hopefully help inform our final project selection. Program Design Committee members also participated in the Intermountain Sustainability Summit panel. Councilors Dugan and Quinn and Armstrong. Thank you for that panel. I thought it was really great, and we got a lot of good feedback from that, and even some of our media inquiries we've had came from that panel discussion. And finally, I presented last week to the Utah Committee of Consumer Services. That's the committee that goes, it's kind of almost like the board for the Office of Consumer Services, and had a really good discussion with their membership last week on the 1st. So obviously, we'll turn to the big item of the day. The PSC approved our program application on March 4th. That order addresses key details like the initial program rate, customer opt-out details, but it kind of delayed action on some more complex issues, namely the program valuation, resource valuation. So what does this mean? This means that we can go forward with the program, which is a great milestone. It's also started the 90-day clock for program ordinance approval by our councils and commissions. So June 2nd is that deadline we're shooting towards. In the meantime, Rocky Mountain and URC are going to continue to collaborate with other parties in the docket. That's something that has been asked, that we reach out to the parties on this, especially on this issue of resource valuation and some related reporting items. And so we're starting that process. We are also still going to continue our negotiations with our clean energy developers with an eye towards executing a contract, hopefully this summer sometime, for our first URC program resources. And let's see, I think, Emily, you sent out the order summary that gives a lot more detail on this on March 9th. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to try to just briefly run down through some of these key provisions and answer any questions that we might have about what the order did and did not say. So I mentioned that as you'll recall in our docket, the parties couldn't come to an agreement necessarily on all aspects of program resource valuation. So the PSC did not approve that. They delayed that part of things, but they realized or concluded that they didn't need to have that completed to actually approve the program itself. So that was a kind of a mix. I think it's actually a good outcome for us. It allows us to continue to kind of weigh the finer points on the resource valuation issue, but importantly to get started on the program. So the order found that the application and the program met all the requirements of the statute and the administrative rule and is in the public interest, which is really good. Sorry, I'm getting a little vertigo here. So this is something that happens with me, so don't worry, but I just, if I'm clenching the side here, that's why. Let's see, they approved the target administrative reserve balance for 2 years. If you'll recall, there was some back and forth about what that should be. I think originally the company wanted several more years. We wanted 1 year, and that ultimately culminated in the PSC approving 2 years. They approved an initial program rate consistent with URC's proposal, what Christopher Thomas requested, of $4, as you've heard, per residential customer. We already talked about the March 4th effective date, which gives us that June 2nd ordinance adoption deadline. They approved a 6-month fee-free cancellation period. That was an extension that Christopher Thomas in his testimony had requested. So we give folks a little bit more time to decide on their participation in the program. And they are going to issue a separate notice establishing a work group that was requested by the Utah Division of Public Utilities. Let's see. And the way they did this is they said that we're basically approving the application as a whole as modified. And so if they modify it explicitly in the order, then that kind of controls. Otherwise, it's the program application as revised throughout the docket process is what was approved. That's a little tricky as staff. That means we have to kind of go through and read the whole thing comprehensively to understand what was actually approved by the order. There's not like a checklist in the order that shows you exactly how each item was decided upon. And in fact, that's something that we as staff are working to prepare for you. So we have kind of the comprehensive overview of everything that's included in a way that's easier to digest than going through that whole docket. So next slide, please. So just briefly, I want to cover the rates. We already talked a lot about it being $4 per month. That's actually includes we think, a 12-cent surcharge for low-income customers for that credit that would go towards low-income customers who want to participate. And the remainder of that $4, $3.88, would cover the actual program cost itself. That $3.88 is actually based on a rate that was also established. Let's go to the next slide if we can. This rate of 0.609 cents per kilowatt hour is the rate for non-residential customers. And that's actually where that 388 on the prior slide came from. It's just on the prior slide that gets that 388 comes from this rate multiplied by an average residential usage of 637 kilowatts per hour. If you do the math, that comes out to that level. And all of this, again, came from Christopher Thomas's recommendation. I think it was in his surrebuttal testimony that it's really in the interest of the program to get an initial rate going and get revenue collection happening so we can build up our administrative and resource reserve. So he kind of modified our testimony in that surrebuttal stage to say, hey, please give us the high end of the board's comfort level so we can get this started and we can work together on this valuation question later. So it's really good news that they came out where they did. And on both of these, I neglected to mention that Schedule 135, the net metering schedule for folks who are grandfathered in on this kind of favorable program for rooftop solar, the statute disallows Schedule 135 participants from participating in URC. So that's the one non-eligible customer class in all of this, and we just flagged that on both of these slides. Next slide, please. And this is interesting to me. This is regarding the program rates over the longer term. As I said, there's going to be this effort to address the resource valuation, which is an important part of the equation for where we end up with our final or at least future rates. And I wanted to highlight something that the PSC said in kind of explaining their comfort level going forward with setting an initial rate. And I'm just going to read it, so bear with me. But while future program rates may diverge from those under Rocky Mountain Power's contingent on later determinations regarding resource valuation and changes to other underlying variables, no evidence in the record suggests that program rates are likely to meaningfully increase from the initial rates approved in this order. Instead, under Rocky Mountain Power's proposal, they would decrease rather significantly after the first 2 years. At the program's inception, customers will likely be deciding whether to opt out with reference to rates that are likely to be higher than rates charged later after the reserve balances are sufficiently established. And I think that's important to hear, kind of rather than us as staff or elected officials trying to interpret this. This is what the PSC said, why they felt comfortable moving ahead with these initial rates. And I bring that up because I could see that coming up in your council and commission hearings. You know, what's going to happen in the future with rates. The PSC has signaled that they feel comfortable that we aren't likely to see a real expansion in rates. So I wanted to flag that for you. Next slide, please. So that's kind of it. I'm going to pause there on the PSC order approval, and we have some other items in a minute, but I wanted to offer an opportunity for questions.
Thank you, Glade. Any questions for Glade at this point? Here.
I know that if they don't opt out in the 6-month period, that residential customers have a $30 payment. What is the same for businesses?
It's different. So it is $6 per kilowatt over a 12-month averaging period. And that it was included in our program application. And Mayor, I'd be happy to share you kind of a schedule of what that looks like from the program application. But that's an important point because for large businesses, that can add up. It's not watt hours, it's watts. And so it's based on kind of how big a load that they might have. And so I think that's why it's important. In one of the things the PSC approved was for very large customers, 1,000 megawatt or bigger, 1,000 kilowatt hour watts or bigger. There's an in-person noticing that happens, and I think that they wanted for those big customers to be 100% sure that they knew what they were deciding when it came to this termination fee. So I'll make sure to flag to send you that so you can see what it looks like for non-residential.
But on their rates, so the $4 for the average rate is about a 5% increase, and on the industrial side, the 0.6 of a penny per kilowatt hour ends up to being about the same amount percentage-wise to their bill too. They're almost the same numbers. Just one is a flat rate for residentials, which is nice, and then the other one is based on how much energy, because that the amount of energy they use is huge variable. So it's about, but the percentage-wise is about the same, right around 5%.
I'll note that in the template memo I sent out, in attachment B, I included a copy of the termination fees that were part of the program application. But I think this could be just something we send out separately as an attachment to folks too. So it's not buried in the memo, but that is, yeah, available in the memo.
Great. Okay, any other questions regarding the PSC order? Okay, if not, let's continue. I've got a few update items. So we talked a little earlier about the startup cost agreement, and if you recall, that is something that Rocky Mountain Power wants to have in place because there's a period of time when they will be expending money on the program, mainly setting up that billing system, updating their software, training folks to take opt-outs and things like that. They'll have to expend resource or funds on that prior to revenue collection starting. And so there needs to be, in the event that for some reason our participation rates are dramatically lower than what is forecasted, they don't want to be on the hook for that, those startup costs. And so, ideally, if we had plenty of time, I think we would seek a startup cost agreement that included most, if not all, of the communities. But in the interest of time, Salt Lake has moved ahead in our budget request process and requested money to set aside to cover the startup costs should they be needed. And so we presented on that last month, but I wanted to follow up to say that we have that agreement drafted now, and our city attorney is reviewing that, and we're just kind of finalizing potential changes to it. But at our last board meeting, and I think on a follow-up program design committee call, there was this, we raised this question about maybe side agreements whereby cities, other communities besides Salt Lake could voluntarily enter into side agreements to help Salt Lake kind of backstop this startup cost. And as part of that, we received a request from the board to have us estimate what that might look like based on our participation to date. So I just took the percentages contributed by each community. So this total here will actually sum up to what you see in the treasurer's report, less about $100, I think, from Sandy, which, they're not participating, so I excluded that. Just took the resulting percentages and then just multiplied it by the startup cost of $820,169. So you could see that, again, this is voluntary. Your community doesn't have to do this, but this could be something to help gauge what would be appropriate should you want to help us. Again, I think this is a very small probability multiplied by a big number. That is, I don't think this is likely to happen where we'll have to actually cover these startup costs. I think the program rate's going to do that for us, but we're just being prudent, and of course, Rocky Mountain doesn't want to move ahead until we have that in place. So just wanted to give you an idea of what that would look like based on participation to date. Next slide, please.
First of all, just before we go, any questions about the startup cost? Because this is money that's just going into a holding account until the program fees pay it off, and which would probably be within the first month.
So question, then would that account be once the fees that are accrued equal the amount, that 820,000 or whatever is Rocky Mountain Power, then would Salt Lake City or whoever contributed to that account get their money back? Is it just kind of like held in escrow, or what's?
Salt Lake City is holding it in our own
Right,
account. Yeah,
right.
we're not.
But
paying
if
it.
like Mill Creek or Holiday or any other community said, well, we'll help
Yeah.
pay our share, then
It's a good question. I don't think we know exactly what those side agreements would look like yet. It's an idea. We just obviously don't want to be the only one to have to backstop that in the unlikely event that we
don't make
need
that
to.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I suspect that similarly the individual communities could hold that in whatever account that they could and have it set aside. But I think the particulars on that are probably something to be ironed out in whatever side agreement or agreements we come up with.
So it's basically us just saying, we'll put that money aside should it be needed, and in that event, then we'll have it ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions on the startup cost agreement? Okay, next slide, please. Oh, you've got it already. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the contract negotiations. I mentioned that we had our kickoff meetings, and I said that Energy Strategies is working on an updated analysis to help answer questions. Those are questions related to startup costs, what that would actually look like, the administrative reserve and the resource reserve. And that's namely how long it will take for the revenue that's going to come in now that we have a new rate. Remember, when this was in the program application before, these were all estimates. Now we've got this $4 per month and the 0.6 cents a kilowatt hour. We've got some other new information, and we can hopefully apply that and just get ourselves better situational awareness. So Energy Strategies is underway with that. We also heard back from Rocky Mountain Power on this optional transmission study that we requested of the bidder for the bidders projects, and they are telling us that they will have their results around May 5th. So that's great. Both of these, all of this information will help us inform our final project selection. We're also awaiting PPA red lines, power purchase agreement red lines from the bidders, just what changes they would hope to see. And then we're just going to host additional negotiation meetings as needed. So that's the update. Wanted to remind you of the timeline, and this has been updated with the PSC approval. So you see the March 4th approval date. That starts that 90-day clock out to June 2nd. Then there's a 5-month period estimated that it will take for Rocky Mountain Power to set up their billing system and train their staff. That's then at the end of that 5 months is the implementation date when noticing starts to go out, and that's a 60-day or roughly 2-month noticing period, followed by the commencement date. And commencement means the date that the bill impacts start happening on your bills, that the program rate starts being charged. And then there's 4 more months beyond that where there's still no termination fee. So when Christopher requested a 6-month fee-free termination cancellation period, it's a combination of those 60 days of the noticing period followed by 4 more months for a total of 6 months. That's that timeline, and I've just again superimposed the contract negotiation power purchase agreement timeline underneath there to show that it's kind of happening in parallel, and those dates are probably more in flux than the top row there. Last slide, I think. Yeah, so just next steps. We want to continue. Obviously, the big focus right now is the ordinance adoption process. We shared that memo with the councils and commissions. We obviously need to have your staff make presentations, and you'll hold the votes on the ordinance. And then importantly, we'd like to have you provide updates to the staff folks regarding your hearing dates and the outcomes on the ordinance adoption. And one of the reasons that's really important, well, one is we can help support you if we know when these are coming up. We can prepare materials and make sure we're communicating. But importantly, Rocky Mountain has signaled a willingness to begin their system preparation work after we get a critical mass of communities. So they're saying they don't think they need to necessarily wait until June 2nd to start that 5-month preparation period. They might be able to do a little of that work up front if they gain a level of comfort that we've got some participating communities. So please, as you can, once you have an outcome regarding the program ordinance, please share that back with staff if you can. Let's see. We're going to participate in, we set up some bi-weekly meetings with Rocky Mountain Power's key staff on this. And so we're just going to keep that meeting cadence up because there's so many implementation items to cover. So we're working through that. And then we will, as I mentioned earlier, we're digging into the docket and trying to kind of synthesize all that information just to fully understand what exactly was approved. Since, again, the nature of the way that the PSC approved this is they noted where they modified the application, but otherwise they said the application is approved as in the docket. So we're going to come up with a kind of a tracker for this. So I would say stay tuned. That's going to start out as sort of a staff resource first, just to help us keep straight as to what they have said. But as it becomes more clear and organized and digestible, I think we'll want to share that with you all as well. And that's all I have for the update. Sorry, that was a long one.
Thank you very much, Glade. Any questions for Glade at this point? Go ahead, Emily.
Just a comment, I wanted to acknowledge Glade for some very deep dives he has taken into the order from the Public Service Commission, the statute, the rules, the program application, all the testimony. What Glade was just saying in terms of like pulling together sort of full interpretation of the order. I mean, just in the last few days, an example is, Rocky Mountain Power reaching out. They're the ones that will actually implement this, right? Like they have to make the updates to their billing system and it all has to be automated correctly. And so they, asked this question regarding noticing for like customers that would say be annexed into a participating community. And Glade sort of, I think, provided just a little bit of insight into his process of like going through the order, going through the, the HB 411, going through the administrative rules, program application, testimony, and it's been very, very deep. So I just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you for that because it's really, really detailed work. And it's kind of all there eventually. It's just pulling a lot of pieces together. But on that, I think I take it as it's a great sign that Rocky Mountain Power is already asking those questions. So they're saying, okay, well, exactly, this has all been approved. So how do we actually translate that into implementing it in our billing system? And so like it's bringing up those questions. It's very, very practical. And Glade has been wading through the waters to make sure that we all fully understand it. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And that's a really good point. I do think that it's a great sign that Rocky Mountain is being responsive and already thinking ahead to that kind of 5-month billing period prep. I want to be clear, we had kind of maybe fits and starts on the communication side that first week or so to try to get our press release approved. We didn't know what that process would look like, but other than some initial teething issues, the company's been really great and getting right back to us on things. So thanks for raising that point. And thank you all for bearing with the dizziness thing. I don't always play well with like fluorescent lighting kind of situations. So struggling a little bit today.
All right. Thank you very much, Glade. No further questions for Glade. We've got item 2.4, which is the public comment period. And since there's no public in the room here, anybody online would like to make a 2-minute comment? This is your chance. All right, seeing no public comments at this point, I'm going to turn the time over to Emily and to review the template memo and slides to support the ordinance consideration process. There's a lot of meat here. Emily will go through that, but if you have any questions, since I won't be able to see you online, just go ahead and shout them out.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. It's all yours, Emily.
Kurt, I'm curious if you could give me screen sharing permissions. That might be easier if I scroll through, but if not, that's okay too. Okay, that seems to have worked. Thank you.
But I think I'm not going to be able to show it to people online. That's my problem. that something you can send me or?
It's the same thing that's in the packet. I was just thinking that for you, it's maybe tedious for me to tell you to scroll through everything.
Is it this right here? Oh, well, you can't see mine.
I'll just have you share it.
Do you want to sit here and just control and?
That's okay. I'll stand here. Okay, so in your packet is a copy of the template memo and template slides that I sent out to everybody back on the 25th of March. So these are kind of like we've done in the past, just some resources available for board members to use as you are preparing to go to your councils and commissions. And also, like usual, we know that all 19 of our communities do things a little bit differently. So to the extent that these are helpful, it's going to depend on the process that your communities use. But hopefully there's something here that you can pull from. So starting with the memo starts with a summary of key points section that I think is really helpful. I know that I'm probably going to incorporate that into my staff report for my council because there is so much information here. It's I think helpful to try to sort of summarize it in one place. But then the memo, as you go through it, goes into the background of the legislation in 2019, the rules, all the steps that our communities took to be involved in the URC agency, some of the background on why creating this program is of interest in terms of the fact that we don't really otherwise have choice about where our energy comes from. Let's see, and then scrolling through the memo, there's a section to potentially go into detail about how your specific community got involved, to the extent that you want to reference past decisions that your governing body has made, as well as the kind of motivation to get involved. And then the memo gets into the order and kind of update of where things stand right now in terms of the Public Service Commission order and the program solicitation. As far as the details that are in here about the actual order from the Public Service Commission, we tried to focus on describing some of the key program details now that we know related to the program rate, related to the opt-out process. We certainly did not attempt to sort of recreate the decision in terms of super specific details. But as Glade was mentioning, staff, we are diving into that. So if you felt you needed to include additional information about the order and wanted some help including that, please let us know. Let's see, and then the kind of last main section of the memo is regarding the program ordinance itself. There's background on how the ordinance was developed, which we have been working on that for like 4 years now, so that it could be included in the program application packet. It describes just that we did make some very recent updates following the Public Service Commission order, and that the ordinance, sort of the template ordinance, is now available for all of us to consider. And then it provides sort of an overview of what is in the ordinance itself in terms of the preamble, the actual sort of effect of the ordinance, which is that, if a community votes to adopt the ordinance, they are essentially enacting the program into their community, then giving all Rocky Mountain Power customers who are eligible to participate the option of whether to stay in or exit. And then it describes a little bit about what is in Exhibit A in the ordinance. In the past, I think most recently within 2026, but in the past as well, we have had our agency's outside attorney, Phil Russell, a couple times also go over the ordinance with the board. So if you wanted to sort of hear in Phil's terms of review of the ordinance too, we've got some recordings of those past presentations. And one thing that has come up is folks have pointed out that this ordinance goes into quite a bit more detail than your typical ordinance. And that we kind of acknowledge that. I think there was a desire when this ordinance was being developed to be somewhat detailed. And, you know, it's possible that for communities that do adopt the ordinance, maybe there's a time in the future where they go back and amend it to sort of clean it up, because some of the details are really about processes that will take place later in 2026. If that's something that you want to talk more about, please feel free to reach out. And then in terms of what's attached to this template memo, there's 3 attachments. There's the same image that we've used many times in slides over the years that describes the process of the development of the program. I mentioned just a bit earlier that attachment B is a copy of a table that was included in the program application regarding termination fees. And then attachment C is that template ordinance itself. It's the same version that we sent out via email to board members back on something like, it was like the week before, March 20th, I'll say. I don't remember the exact date, but it's just a copy of it in there. So that is the template memo. And then next we have the template slides, which begin a little bit further down in the packet. The slides are going to look pretty familiar to slides that we have used in the past, as well as some of the slides that Glade just covered in his program design committee update. So I don't want to be too redundant and going over them, but in terms of sort of an outline that's in here, it largely follows the memo in terms of giving background on the program, giving background on how your community got involved, and then talks about the Public Service Commission order, those key program details that we know, such as the initial rate. It shares a version of the timeline that Glade just shared with us during the Program Design Committee update, and then it talks about the ordinance. So really similar content-wise to the memo, just, you know, attempts to put it in slide form. Again, if there's one thing I've learned from being involved in this effort, it's that all local governments do things a little bit differently when we make decisions. And so maybe you don't even need slides, whatever, you know, up to you. I can say that. So I'm preparing to present to the Summit County Council on April 15th and need to get my materials done this week. And so I started by taking the PowerPoint file, the template slides, and then kind of applying sort of the Summit County branding, putting our logo in there. And I, for the most part, like personally, I'm using a lot of these slides. There's a couple that I consolidated and some things that I'm swapping out personally. But I think in terms of kind of the storyline, it seems fairly logical, at least for me, to adapt it to bringing it to my council. Let's see. I don't think there's anything in the slides in particular to pull your attention to that's, you know, sort of different than what we've been talking about so far. I will say, so let's see, the third to last slide is a sort of a draft version of what maybe a policy analysis recommendation slide could look like. This came up earlier during the communications update with Chris. You know, we try not to sort of play advocacy role here among you know, staff that are supporting this, but you know, I understand that often the person who's assigned to like present an ordinance to their council or their commission, part of what they are doing is providing a recommendation. So again, this is just maybe one version of what that might look like. I'm taking this in a slightly different direction for the Summit County Council, but just want to acknowledge that that is there. And then I think the last thing that I'll just call out for now, in that second to last slide, summary and next steps, you know, as we've been having a lot of meetings over the last few weeks about the order and communications, you know, we acknowledge it's really important to be very, very clear what the actual implications are of the decision that our governing bodies are making. So, you know, and those last few bullet points there of, you know, if the community adopts the ordinance, you're bringing the program to utility customers in your community. If you do not adopt the ordinance, the program will not be available. So, you know, this is one way I'm trying to work on simplifying how I describe it myself, having been in the weeds for so long, but really trying to be clear about kind of the implication of the decision, I think is quite important. So yeah, those are the template slides, template memo. When I sent this out to everyone back on the 25th, the memo is in a Word doc version. The slides are in a PowerPoint version. I'll note that in the slides, the only reason why you might want to use it in the PowerPoint version is that the slide that contains the program development process, it uses animation so that as you click, each step of the process appears, which for me makes it a little bit easier to present personally, to sort of talk through that one step at a time. And then in the template memo in the Word doc, I'll just call your attention that there are some comments that I left in there. And in some cases, those comments provide some additional information. So for example, there's a comment where I put the date that each community joined the agency in case you were having trouble tracking down those documents. There's a comment in there that links to information about the noticing costs that Christopher had estimated for all of us last year. So if you're going through that Word doc, I would just call your attention to those comments because there's some additional information in those contained in those comments that may be helpful to you. But of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much, Emily. Any questions for Emily? A couple of key points just
No, I was just going to say, this is really helpful. I appreciate you putting it together and making it an available resource for all of us to use, because communicating this and making sure not only our council knows, but anyone in the public who's attending our meetings, this is really clear and concise and will be great. Thank you.
I will acknowledge that I want to thank Sophia with the Salt Lake City team, who is writing Salt Lake City's transmittal kind of a little bit ahead of me working on this template memo. So I borrowed a lot of language, and yeah, appreciate the team effort that went into it. And I think, yeah, I will say I've gotten a little bit of feedback so far, largely that for folks who are thinking about using these, that they're probably going to pare them down a little bit. So I think that's a good thing, that we maybe gave you more detail than you ultimately need. And yeah, again, if there's any way that we can sort of help you in using these, just let us know.
Yeah, and again, as you read through this, if there's anything confusing in here, just send us a text, send us an email, and we'll get on it. I do want to just talk a little bit more about that, the long-term program rates. So that Rocky Mountain Power goes through a rate study with the Public Service Commission every year. So, and that's those rate studies. This rate studies in this program can happen more than once a year. But they could happen every 2 years, but they can't happen, every 6 months. So there is an annual going on, and Rocky Mountain Power does it every year for rate studies, and that's why you see it in the news when they're saying, hey, we're going to adjust our rates. They would be doing that. It's the same thing here. But as a program stays steady and grows, our rates, again, as the Public Services Commission says, will probably go down lower as our resource reserve increases, and then the cost comes down. So there's a couple things that are not intuitive, and then it's not always that easy to describe and explain.
I think that represents a question that we have heard lately, as has been acknowledged. Folks are curious about rates over the long term, and I think it might be in the template slides, but yeah, we tried to sort of provide the talking point that all of our rates are already adjusted regularly as it is. For this program, the cost to participate in the program, that rate will change no more than annually, is I think the terminology that's used in the statute.
So can I ask a question? And this maybe isn't for you, but the communications team. But is there kind of a long-term plan just to keep our residents informed about what are they purchasing? Like what exactly is coming online on the grid, and how is this helping? And just so they can see the progress, so that it's not just that they're sending off their $4 a month without any kind of understanding about what's coming of it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that is something I know I would want to communicate, and I'm guessing that between now and when the program actually launches, we'll know what the first project is that these rates are going to help develop. And I think that I doubt Rocky Mountain Power does a press release for like every new resource that they bring online, but they do often do that. So I think that they would they would probably already want to do a press release, and we would want to do a press release to probably announce the project that's been selected. But Chris, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, or if the committee has talked about that.
Well, it's an interesting question. We have two really important communications milestones before us: the ordinance adoption and program launch, and the opt-out period, which I guess I consider the same milestone. What I hear Mayor Jackson asking about is maybe like beyond that into the future, year over year as rates are adjusted, and it kind of gets at a bigger question of like, what is the agency years on? So I guess I would say what we've been working on the communication side is tuned partially to support communities in approaching the ordinance adoption deadline, but also a little bit towards supporting communities as we go into that program launch phase, when we really need to get the word out so people know to anticipate the opt-out notices. But I think we'll be probably pivoting and potentially taking on a different strategy, or at least set of tactics further on into 2026 as program launch approaches.
And I kind of see it as, we did the 80 megawatt electron rollout and ribbon cutting. I see the same thing going on here, but also realize that the first resources that we get, we'll be doing more resources later on, because we still need to get to that 100%, or still need to increase that to match it up. So we will be adding some more resources too. So we'll do another same thing, send up for bidders for a second resource.
Right. I just think
we
our
just
communities will want to know.
Oh, absolutely.
About. So, once again, sort of be on the lookout for our, future content releases.
Yeah, we definitely need to, as soon as we have we get the bidder, we announce that. We get the, groundbreaking, we announce that.
Good, because I just see, in a few years from now, people who are new move into the area wondering, what is this extra $4 charge that I'm getting? They're going to want information. Not only, I think it's just important that we keep that up to date so that people are aware of what exactly they are contributing to and what that's doing for our energy grid and for hopefully our air quality and renewable sources.
Thank you very much, Emily. Appreciate it very much. And just next time is 2.6, board member comments. Any other comments from the board?
Sure.
Mayor?
Yeah. This is, I guess, my first meeting, at least in person, and I really appreciate all the effort that has been given for so many years from everyone involved, and especially for Salt Lake City, their leadership on this. I'm hopeful that we can help our council members understand the many benefits that this program has, and just really grateful for all the effort. And having served in the legislature and understanding the efforts that I know the sponsor of this bill back in 2019, I'm sure this is one of the most thoughtful and forward-looking pieces of legislation we've seen in the energy realm. So I really appreciate everyone's involvement from the staff and everyone that has pushed this forward on all the different committees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate that very much. And I just want to echo what the mayor said there to Glade, Emily, Sophia, Monica, Chris. You guys have done a tremendous job, and appreciate all the great work. And I look forward to the next couple years. All right. And that's 2.6, 2.7. We don't have a closed session, so we are adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion from Mayor Jackson, a second from Councilmember Quinn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a great.
Aye.
All right. That passes. Have a great day. Thank you.